from drunkenness, Mrs. Pearson. Your husband was a very, very sick man.
Well, who killed him?
He killed himself.
Oh, but he couldn't have. He
employed a gunman to do it, but it was suicide.
And why didn't he leave a note or something? He could have ruined us all.
I imagine that is precisely what he wanted to do. You all thought that he was a hopeless drunk and took advantage of him. He allowed Mary Donahue to freeze him out of his interest in the company, let Mr. Harper juggle his books to cover a smuggling operation he was engaged in, and let you go your way with Ernie.
But, Mr. Boto...
In short, Mrs. Pearson, your husband allowed all three of you to furnish yourselves with as convincing a set of motives as a jury could ask for.
But Jerome wasn't like that. He must have intended it as a joke.
In your case, that may very well be. But he would not have involved me in his plan just for a joke. I think he sincerely wanted to bring Miss Donahue and Mr. Harper to justice. He must have wanted his suicide to be found out sooner or later in order to prevent them from collecting the insurance that would have kept the corporation from going bankrupt.
Oh, really? Jerome was the end. Oh, what's going to become of us all?
If Miss Donahue and Mr. Harper do not go to prison, they will probably sue each other to death. You might even be forced to earn your own living, Mrs. Pearson.
Oh. Well, my mother always used to say that hell hath no fury like a dry martini. But this...
You are so very, very right, Mrs. Pearson. It is the end. I did not learn until later how thoroughly Mr. Pearson had planned his charade of the dry martinis. The final joke was the check with which he paid the man he hired to kill him. It not only furnished proof that he was a suicide, it also bounced, thus depriving the assassin of his ill-earned fee. Mr. Pusher Martin should have heeded the advice of the Japanese sage who said, "Where profit is, loss is hidden nearby." And now, may the autumn fragrance of an October evening lie gently upon your lidded eyes, and the cares of the day drift away as silently as the fallen petals of a flower upon the serene waters of a stream gliding between two willow trees at a place where two lovers meet. Good night.
Welcome back. This episode seemed kind of familiar to me, and I went and I double-checked my memory, and this was originally... Now, we've talked about script reusage before, but this may be one of the biggest stretches. This was a reworked script from Sam Spade. Now, you just think about it, reworking a Sam Spade script into a Mr. Moto script. I listened to a little bit of it just to confirm my memory, and while the basic plot was essentially the same, the dialogue by the detective had to change so much, just because those two characters, they talk completely different. Usually you don't have to do like a ton of rewriting. For example, going from Jeff Regan to Rocky Fortune, or not Rocky Fortune, but Rocky Jordan, or going from Jeff Regan to Johnny Dollar. You know, there's certainly some of the dialogue needs rewritten, but not as much. But with Mr. Moto, such a different change of tone. In some ways, it's kind of sad as we got to the end of the series, because when we started out, you know, I think that what's made Mr. Moto interesting to me is how very different it was from the other detective series. And the script reuse for the last episode kind of ends on a downbeat note. But to be fair, the series, it looks like it's just not getting the ratings. Canceled as it was after 23 weeks. because the usual length for a series to be canceled or to be considered for canceled is about 26 weeks. But this was apparently the very last episode. So, yeah, it was sad that it didn't keep with that. But still, at least it ends with a good script. Even though they had to work, you almost think would have been easier to rewrite that. The script was originally written by Bob Tallman and Gil Dowd. All right, well, now we turn to listener comments and feedback. And we did have some comments on Mr. Moto. And let me go ahead and just pull that up here. Joel says, I'm loving Mr. Moto. Exciting plots, great acting, super personality. As good as any movie, real theater of the mind. Brian says, I hate to admit I stopped listening after the first 2 episodes. I will give it another shot after seeing the positive reviews. Well, thanks so much, Brian. And I think the show did get better after the first episode. And as I said, when I listened to the first episode of Mr. Moto several years back, I actually was like, no way am I going to run this on the Great Detectives podcast. But I gave it a more extended tryout, trying out different shows, and ended up deciding to run it. Rebecca says definitely worth the listening. And but on the other hand, Bobby Lee Walker says it amazes me how they use racial slurs like it wasn't anything. And that references, I think, an episode a couple weeks back. And that's one of those things I will kind of debate whether to call to attention or to let go. Certainly, that sort of language, was not appropriate. But I almost take it for granted the audience knows that and question the value of going too deeply into that. I will say that there were these uses of slurs on occasion against the great Oriental detective characters, and usually, they get the slur and they overcome it, not so much by comments but by solving the case. I do remember reading about one Charlie Chan movie back during the first few movies, where I think it was in the 30s, where someone dropped a racial insult, and then when Charlie solved the case, he turned to the person who had hurled it and said, "Not bad for a," and then just basically threw the insult back in the guy's face. Usually, though, the response was more subtle. It's that the hero who has been insulted wins. He solves the case. He's the good guy. And in some case, the person who says it is either the villain or just not a very good person. There was definitely, in the post-war world, as you listen to radio, a focus on trying to judge people based on their merits and not on the basis of race or religion. And in some ways, even though some of these characters are now viewed as offensive in and of themselves, that was often not the author's intent. In particular with Charlie Chan, Earl Duer Biggers created Chan as kind of based on a Honolulu detective named Chang Apana, with the goal of showing a heroic portrayal of Oriental characters, kind of a contrast to all of the Fu Manchu type stories out there. And Mr. Moto's origins, I think, very much different, as the original books and the movie played into our fascination and perhaps our concerns with the rise and the increasing influence of the Japanese Empire. This story series, made after the war, I think had much more of an intent similar to the Chan series. Despite Moto really is portrayed as kind of someone who is fully American, fully patriotic, dedicated to the country, and the overall message and thought of the series that regardless of where we come from, whatever our background, if you lived in the United States and loyal to the country, you're an American and should be treated and respected as such. So that's my thought on that. Definitely unfortunate use of language, but I think the broader message of Mr. Moto should not be forgotten in that. All right, well, that will do it for today. We will be back next week. We're going to be bringing you Murder and Mr. Malone, and join us tomorrow as we continue the Fathom 5 matter. Send your comments to box13 at greatdetectives.net. Follow us on Twitter at Radio Detectives and become one of our friends on Facebook, facebook.com/Radio Detectives. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham, signing off.
Hello? God, I hope these messages are getting out. This is Toby. I'm sending out another distress signal to let everyone know that the secret transmission crew and myself are safe. We did find Kristen, and it's a very long story, but she's safe as well. This is week 2 of us on the run from the Men in Black. I wish I could give you more details, but I just can't at the moment. We can't do the show again this week, so we're going to let our friends take over our emergency broadcast signal for the time being. Also, if you'd like to help support us while we're on the run, we have t-shirts available on What a Maneuver's website. There will be a link in the description of this episode. Every shirt sold will help support the show and us while we're on the run, of course. You know, gas station burritos and stuff. And if you send us proof on Twitter at SecretTransPod or through email secrettransmission@hotmail.com, we'll send you a free 1 1/4 inch pin. We hope to be back soon. I really hope this message gets out to everyone.
Okay, listen up, this is how it goes down. You listen to the best geek podcast in town. Gonna spit a few bars to let everybody know that you're tuned into the Geek Yoga Podcast Show. There's Som, the man, the myth, the nerd, with his mate there, wave to take over the world. Can't forget my man Rara, he can't do a cha-cha, but he's got all the girls ready to show off their tatas. And the man called Well, his name is Knock, who's a full-time geek from his head to his socks. These guys are crazy, people say that they're loony, just as insane as casting Batman as Clooney. So here is the show taking all the rest to task. It's now time for the Geek Yoga Podcast. Bitch.
Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of the Geek Yoga Podcast. I'm Knock.
I'm Sam. Rah-rah. And Wave.
We are filling in for the Secret Transmission Podcast because they are on the run from a federal organization that are trying to track them down to silence them.
The intelligence agency is out to get them.
So they asked us to fill in for them while they're underground, and we're going to bring you some local haunted places.
You know, I really do hope that their cave behind Washington's left nostril does work out.
Shut up!
Go!
Who's going first?
What do you got? What do you guys got? I actually have 3 because mine were somewhat short.
Wow, mine's short and I only did the 1. Just like school, I fucking fucked up the homework so bad.
You did your homework. Congrats.
I think we all just kind of randomly picked different shit. Anyway.
Well, I'll pick one first.
Go.
This one is a story that I heard back when I was a kid. We used to frequent this creek swimming hole upstate in Onondaga County. It's a little bit
upstate New York, by the way.
Upstate New York. It's a little bit out of ways from Syracuse, New York, which I'm sure people have probably heard of. This is called 13 Curves. And it's a place.
She's a curvy lady.
Well, there's a road that cuts through the hills up there, and it features one of these winding roads features 13 distinct curves, and there's always been safety concerns there. And over 70 years ago, a terrifying and brutal car accident had occurred at Cedarville Road in Onondaga, New York, just 10 miles southwest of Syracuse. Since that fateful day, it has been said that the road, which is known better by its nickname, the 13 Curves, has been haunted by the souls of those who died in this tragic accident all those years ago. This place is known for its ominous and tightly wound curves overlooking a creek, which people can swim in today, as I did when I was a kid. That's how I kind of heard the story, was swimming in the creek underneath this winding road up ahead, or up above you, and everyone would go, oh, where does that road lead to? And then inevitably that would lead to, yeah, right, everyone would be like, well, funny story about that.
It's so funny, it's tragic.
Yeah, and then, you're a kid learning about somebody who died in the water. The story goes that a newly married couple who were navigating the road on their wedding night, while coming across the road, one of the curves, their ride veered off out of control into a nearby creek, and as it rolled down the hill, it scattered their parts across the hill, and finally the car landed in the creek down below where you can inevitably swim. So now you're sitting in this water, hearing the story about a married couple that just died from the hill, and you're like, should I be swimming in this?
It's okay. I peed in it.
Is it like, yeah, don't worry, it's sterile now. We peed in it. It killed him instantly, and since that day, travelers on this road have seen ghostly image of the bride with glowing eyes. Sometimes she's covered in red or blood splatter, some people say. Sometimes with an orange lantern, because I've heard
because
this,
she was greedy?
Well, I've heard this story told where they weren't in a car, they were in a carriage. Like, it was
So
just a
it
wedding.
goes back farther,
It might go back further than
or it could
people
have been.
could just up the
Yeah.
years
Well, wait, I'm
as
confused.
the story goes on.
How did she meet Larfleeze?
Jesus Christ.
It's a possibility that they were in. They just gotten married. They're taking a carriage
Yeah.
ride up
Well,
this road
that's
too.
true.
So
I mean,
yeah.
it's
Yeah, I mean, people still do that to this day.
To this day.
Donna and I were looking into whether or not to do that.
especially in upstate New York in the fall. I mean, it's beautiful up there, and winding through those roads in the hills. If you've ever gone through New York State in the fall, you know it's a really beautiful place to do something like that.
Unless you live here and see it every
year,
all of your life.
Leafers!
Yeah, the frickin' leafers. So sometimes they see her wandering the curves or standing amongst the hills with the lantern, wandering the shoulder of the road. Now, not many people say that she's been violent or attacking. However, there has been some that say that she appeared to leap out at their vehicles while they were passing by the roads, almost causing them to crash. Because there's been, since the years, there's been lots of accounts of people almost crashing there. And there's, not every single account, but a lot of those accounts have been, well, we saw something and it kind of caused us to crash. So maybe the bride, maybe not. Another thing that people have spotted a ghostly image in their rearview mirrors while they're driving through these curves. Yeah. Oh, but only in these like stretch of the 13 curves. And if they look back, like to see if there's somebody sitting in their back seat, nothing's ever there. But it's always the same ghostly white image of a bride in their rearview mirror, which is pretty
the group was like, "I'm cool being dead."
Yeah, right.
It's cool. I'm moving on.
Well, I wonder if like the bride was stuck in the car and the groom was the one that had his body parts scattered. Mm-hmm. Because maybe that went to I don't know how apparitions work really. So. The rearview mirror, yeah. So now it's become a tradition to travel this road on Halloween night for everyone up in Syracuse, and I know the police have been like trying to stop it, because as more and more people do it,
it's a traffic problem.
And you're going to end up really causing an accident, and somebody else will probably die on that very same road.
Well, you know what? If somebody else dies, maybe they can take the bride into the afterlife.
Yeah, there we go.
And that way,
finally give them some closure,
Give her the next husband.
Yeah, and a lot of these trips have had people report encounters of the bride. So I don't know, it's something pretty cool. Yeah,
that's kind of like you see that in movies sometimes too. So it's kind of like a neat thing of like I don't know, someone's life cut too short, and they're sort of like angry about it
now. Yeah.
Trapped and angry about it. So they like do this shit.
Wow.
That's kind of a cool
thing. Was one that stuck out to me as just when I was a kid, remembering it. Because while I was doing research for this episode, I came on one that was sort of like that from down in PA. And it just was like, oh my God, that's right. I remember being told one when I was a kid. And that one just stuck with me ever since. That's one of my favorite ghost ones. Cool. You guys have any other ghost ones?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because my second one is a little bit more like, not necessarily ghost, but more kind of
this is
alternate dimension stuff. So I wanted to keep on the ghost train.
I think all mine are ghosts. And I'll go next if that's okay.
Yeah, what do you got?
Mine's more benign, I guess. It's sort of more of like just like a local folklore kind of haunting thing.
Yeah.
Here in the Triple Cities area, we have a science center called the Roberson, and attached to the science center is an actual mansion. Where the original people lived. But I'm not going to talk about that one because I just messed up my notes.
Oh, no.
I'm going to talk about something else.
All right.
Because where I have my number 1, where I'm supposed to start,
is actually the number 2.
But here's the connection. They were both designed by the same guy.
Oh, really?
So the same architect designed both buildings. So that's how I was going to link them together for this episode.
Okay.
So before the Roberson, let's talk about this: the New York State Inebriate Asylum, or the Castle on the Hill.
Castle on the Hill.
Now this one I want to start with because it's straight up out of like a Blumhouse. What's the logo that has like the skull with the buzzsaw in it?
Buzzsaw in it.
I know
exactly
those kind of
what you're
horror
talking about.
movies,
Yeah.
you know, where it's like this building looks like it should be fucking haunted.
Yeah, you just drive by it and
Yeah.
it looks like this place has history to it.
Right.
And sadly, it looks haunted in the daylight.
Yeah,
That's how
the
scary
daylight.
this place actually is.
And it's actually pretty cool. Let's see. This is some tidbits I have here. Opened in 1864, this large Gothic revival building looks straight out of a horror movie, like we just said.
Yeah.
It was the first place in, I think, America where they treated alcoholism as a disease and started treating people there.
From what I've heard,
So,
that's what I know.
There was like some new stuff they did. It was also the first place that they started using electroshock
Oh, shit.
as a form of treatment.
Yeah.
So
While they were all drunk.
yeah.
Well, yeah, back then when they were just starting out with this stuff, it was crude.
Well, electricity was still very, very new.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there were some that did not go according to plan.
Treatment might have been a little rough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they also used lobotomy a lot. Yeah. As a form of
back
treatment.
then, it was probably the ice pick lobotomy where they went in through the eye socket, the corner of the eye, and then you go down so far,
Yeah.
and then you kind of just scramble things around.
Right.
Those damn drunkards.
Well, this is just background I'm setting up here for this because it's also around this time period where like the psychological sciences were still kind of forming.
Mm-hmm.
So there are people put in there that may not have been insane.
Yeah,
But
who shouldn't
because
have been there, really.
who shouldn't have been there and therefore suffered these treatments. Or like even back then, that was sort of an easy way to get rid of somebody.
Yep.
Right,
So, you know,
right.
family members, political opponents, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you could have them like deemed insane.
I'm sure there was a lot of gaslighting going on, too. No, you're insane, and you've convinced them that...
Exactly.
Shit,
I feel better.
Yeah.
right.
I mean, there was a lot of that going on around that time too.
Or if you have enough money, you can just say, here's $500. I need this person locked up for a couple of months.
Yeah, they never come back the same.
Yep. They never come back to pick them up.
Yeah. I mean, even just standing on the grounds of that place gives you an eerie feeling,
Right.
you know?
I mean, it's just, and now it's all fenced off, and there's like with our local university, they want to try to like save it as a historical
building.
But
This is not the one on Court Street,
it is
Industrial Parkway.
Yeah, it's up on the hill.
Right.
Up on the hill,
Okay,
though.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Right before you kind of get to the industrial park, right?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I think the industrial park is like still far down.
Still
It
further
is
up a
far.
little bit,
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
before-
It's the next road.
It's about
North.
5 minutes. Like
Yeah.
it's like a couple minutes before the nudie bars.
Yeah, there you go.
You know
Everyone
what I'm
knows that.
Yeah. Let's see what else did I got here on this place.
This is going to people in Texas.
Well, I know people have there's like a little manhole that's a couple feet away from that place, and
Wait, away from the nudie bar? Or
no,
away from the castle?
not the I mean, yes, the nudie bar, but away from the castle, and because like you said, Rod, it's fenced off. But I know some kids that have gotten in there because there's a little manhole that has a little passageway that goes right to it,
Oh.
and it's just a couple feet off of the premises.
Uh-huh.
And the manhole is easily accessible. You can actually pop it open. It's not fenced off at all. But the thing is, you got to like traipse through this small little this half-submerged passageway to get into the basement.
You got to go
and I'm not doing that shit.
Yeah, so it's already creepy enough just getting in.
Now, I'm not necessarily hugely supernatural, but I get weird fucking feelings from that, and I will not be doing that shit.
Well, here's the thing. According to the research and stuff that I did, you can actually see stuff that people have captured there.
Yeah.
About 13 years ago, 2003, something like that, a local paranormal group went in there and they did one of their investigations.
Yeah.
And if you do a search for, I'll read it again just in case you folks want to do it, the New York State Inebriate Asylum or the Castle on the Hill in Binghamton, New York, you can see some of the stuff they've captured. And some of the stuff they've captured, they've listed as, and I just looked at it today just as a refresher, there are orb pictures, there are like pictures of ectoplasm, this is what they're saying, and apparitions in this mist that you can see forming.
Yeah.
You know, they're still photographs, so it's not like you're seeing like,
No, but still.
Vigo.
Right, yeah, you're not ever seeing
you're not going to see that.
living
but,
painting.
You know, you
Rivers of pink slime.
Yeah, I mean, but you can see the stuff that they supposedly had captured on their website. So
I'll have to look those up because I knew that there was photos and stuff that existed, but I've never hunted them down.
Yeah. And aside from actual like testimonial of people who have worked there, that's pretty much what I got in terms of why that place is haunted.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and just talking to people locally, I mean, 9 times out of 10, you're going to come across somebody that has some sort of eerie story about that place.
Right.
And when it comes to asylums that are that old, bad shit happened back then.
Yeah.
People died unexpectedly. You know, experiments were done on these people with electroshock, with lobotomies, you know, alcoholism. Even homosexuality at one point in time was considered a mental illness.
Yeah.
So people were going in there that may not have had mental illnesses and was just treated so brutally.
Yeah.
And, you know, people do die from these things.
Well, yeah, and just all that negative energy has got to have some sort of reaction in there.
You know? I mean, certainly a cool place to
and
check
this
out.
guy, so the guy that built that also built the Roberson Mansion?
Yeah, the Roberson Mansion.
We should find out if he built anything else and then patterned them out and see if it comes out to a...
Well, because we've already got 2 haunted buildings they built.
Yeah, right. Because, holy shit.
Yeah, it's pretty nutty.
Was the mansion built there, do we know? Or was it moved there?
It was built there.
It was built there? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I
couldn't remember if it was actually built there or not.
And they just added the museum part onto it.
And they added the museum part onto it. Okay, that's what it was.
I mean, that's always pretty good, though, where you can feel, like, someone behind you, the door's closing in there.
Yeah, I mean, that's another place, just like the Inebriate Asylum, where it's like, there's places in the Roberson where you just feel, it just feels odd. There's something off. Not that you can place it, not that it's negative, you know, it's just...
But you know something's not right.
Since we're talking about it, I can, talk about it.
Well, fine. I have this short one about the Sherwood Inn in Green in my area.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Green, New York is Sherwood Inn. I don't have much on it because this webpage sucks. It's located at 25 Genesee Street. There's been reports of apparitions. A girl killed herself in either room 207 or 209. Her name was Rebecca. She kind of just haunts the halls. Not really scaring anybody, just shows up. A presence in the hallway.
Yeah.
Just go into the ice maker.
Yeah, I just need to get some ice.
And this place, it's gone through a few different owners throughout the years. There was no date on when the girl was reportedly killed herself. But, yeah.
You know, from Sherwood Inn, I'm pretty sure that's where one of our local news stations, about 4 or 5 years ago.
That's the Barron's Inn, and that's the other ones I have.
Yeah.
That one has a little bit more interesting history.
I don't know that one.
Well, there you go.
Oh.
Wait. You go next.
Okay, we're not doing the Baron?
We'll circle back.
Okay. So, since these have all been pretty much localized to Broome and Onondaga County.
Yeah. And Shenango.
And Shenango, but to the southern tier of New York.
Yeah.
I want to shoot up to the North Country. About an hour south of Montreal, an hour west of Burlington, on Lake Champlain, is the city of Plattsburgh. And Plattsburgh's my alma mater. Loved going there. Great school. And I loved my dorm room, which was in Harrington Hall. Right next to Harrington Hall is McDonough Hall. And McDonough Hall is fucking haunted. I had friends who lived there. I'd be there partying. Yes, I was a little drunk, but not all the time. Sometimes we were just playing video games.
Yeah.
But no, and I'm not the only one. There's a lot of reports of radios that would turn themselves on. No one touching them. Things moved, washcloths, towels, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And for a while back in the 80s, there was a string of... It was 1 year. Give me 1 sec to pull up. I had it right here. But of course, then you look back at a whole list of text.
Yeah, and then you're like, where was
I
that?
just saw that date.
Yeah, I know. But anyways, there was one semester where the fire alarm... Here we go. In the 1982 to 1983 academic year, fire alarms in McDonough rang at 3:30 a.m. 13 times.
Jeez.
And the fire department couldn't explain a single one of them. Yeah, this is... And what the cause is, so far as people can tell, the field that was built on used to be, back during the War of 1812, it was a hanging ground for the local armory.
Oh, shit.
And it was swampy, marshland, all that.
Yeah.
And it got drained for building
the school?
McDonough Hall. And while they were building it, the excavators found 2 graves. And one of the stones couldn't be read at all. The other, they could make out a name on. The name, it said, wife of Benji, last name appeared to be Vaughn, and daughter of Nathan and Roseanne Averill, died December 12, 1812, age 47 years. And they found the 2 headstones. They couldn't make out the other one, and a piece of bone, a joint thing.
Some sort of
bone, some
yeah,
sort.
Yeah.
Now, they did set these aside, and they were out, and they disappeared. Now, people figured it was just like souvenir, bandits, whatever. Somebody's like, oh, this will be awesome, this will look great.
I could hawk this at some point.
But I mean, this was 1949, so this wasn't exactly, the era of eBay here.
Right, yeah.
And they were never recovered. Nobody knows how they disappeared.
Wow.
There is still the chance that it was just somebody took them, but, yeah.
So to this day, those headstones have never been found?
They've never been found. Only one went missing.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't find out which one.
Yeah.
I also, while doing some research, read an account of a girl who stayed there back in the 80s.
Yeah. And
her and her roommate had dealt with a lot of the same stuff. She was there during the semester of all the 3:30 a.m. fire alarms.
Yeah.
And her and her roommate saw their washcloth come off of the towel rack, up and down and just drop. Jesus. And she also reported that one night she was in her bunk, the top bunk, while her roommate was studying.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden she couldn't move. And her roommate started asking, did you hear that? Did you hear that? And once she could finally move again, she said,